Like, where are you seeing most people go wrong as an agency owner when it comes to sales, just in general?
We've had up to the biggest amount of appointments in one day has been close to 50.
You ripping 20 sales calls a day, or that they think they can just go talk to more people, get more business, and that's going to scale them.
100 leads coming in per day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Agency U, episode number 2. In this one, we're going to go through all things sales, and we have what, in my opinion, is expert in sales, Gilberto, co-founder of Agency U. I'm actually going to fire him a lot of questions on this one because I'm going to learn a lot just from hearing from him, even though we talk to each other multiple times a day about stuff. But I
Yeah, all
still
the
feel like there's
time.
always stuff that I pull from you just throughout our conversations, whether it's in sales or just not in general. So, yeah, man, welcome everyone. What's up, Gilberto?
What's up, man? Let's get into it. I'm
Let's get
excited for
into it,
this
man.
one.
All right, man. So your sales operation has always impressed me just from the sheer volume. It's been pretty crazy. Like you tell me you had like you ripping 20 sales calls a day or like something like that. Your team is for the most part, but it's pretty nuts in the fact that you've taken thousands and thousands of sales calls and have has led to millions of dollars is pretty cool. But the sheer volume and the way you do it from more of a tactical perspective versus like, oh, this person got referred to me. It's a totally different conversation than what you're doing from.
Completely different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you got to the level where it's like you're not like, yeah, you'll get referrals, I'm sure, but most of the business is people who don't really know you. So you're having to convert somebody cold, which I think is what everybody's eventually going to get to as a business owner, as an agency owner, because like maybe at first it's all referrals, all fun and dandy, but eventually there's going to be people that you're going to have to actually like sell and use some tact. So
Yeah. I think at its height, we've had up to the biggest amount of appointments in one day has been close to 50. It was like 46
no way.
or something like that we had in one day. So
That's
like everyone fully booked out from like 8 all the way to like 6 p.m., like fully booked out, in some cases like double booked.
wild.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think that's the most appointments in one day. And then I think at this point I was like looking at my CRM and stuff for a total amount of appointments that I've taken, and it's been well over, since like last 6 years, about 1,000 something.
Nice.
So like well over, probably touching 1,100. But let's just say 1,000 sales calls taken.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
1,000 hours. What's a thousand divided
crazy
by
amount.
24? 1,000 divided by 24. It's 41 days, almost 42 days worth of sales calls.
I
24
know,
hours.
it's insane, man. Yeah,
That's crazy. Let's just
it's
divide
a
it.
lot. So yeah, a lot of like data points, a lot of just like learning. And like initially 6 years ago, I had like no sales experience at all. I was
Yeah.
actually like super nervous for my first sales call, like extreme, like the first probably like, I don't know, 50. I was very anxious and very like nervous
Yeah.
of like talking to like any business owners. I would like literally like rehearse my script. I would go through like
That's
everything.
awesome.
Yeah. And it still felt like, yeah, when someone would pop into Zoom, I just felt like so like nervous and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now it's like, it's kind of like, whatever, because it's
Second
just
nature.
happened so many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't kind of really like feel anything like that. But yeah, it's come a long way from
Yeah.
that point.
It's nuts. What do you think? Like, so we're talking to a lot of agencies who are kind of in the phase of scaling. Like, where are you seeing most people go wrong as an agency owner when it comes to sales, just in general?
Yeah. I take a lot of calls for agency U, like at this point that we're at right now. So talk to a lot of agency owners. I have a lot of agency owner friends. And I think the biggest part with like those that are maybe at the point where they're like not scaling their agency is like as kind of quickly or to the extent that they want to, is like they're missing a component of client acquisition, which is like being able to have a sales process for being able to take an outbound call, or even like calls from like ads, because I know some people do that as well. Like having a sales process, every organization, like every business has some sort of sales process, right? Like even if it's like a B2C company, if it's a B2B, like every single like organization, if they're big enough, has some sort of sales process. And so when someone is going from like kind of being a freelancer, they're like below 10K a month and like they're kind of wanting to scale up. The biggest thing is like they have no sales process. And I think the reason why like this conversation is so important is a lot of agency owners, I think, don't kind of put as much attention to this because of the fact that they're very used to like word of mouth referrals. And like when I talk to someone, they're like, yeah, if I talk to someone, I can close them or whatever. Yeah, you can close them, but it's like they were pretty much sold before coming onto the phone. If
Mm-hmm.
they're like from a friend or a referral, it's a very high chance of closing them. You just have to show them you're not a weirdo and that you are legit and can get the job done. Whereas like when you're having someone come in from like even an ad or coming in from like a cold email, for example, there's like a certain process that you have to follow that's going to increase the likelihood of you closing that person and turning them from a stranger to a client.
Yeah. So you would say like most people, so the problem or where most people go wrong is that they think they can just go talk to more people, get more business, and that's going to scale them. And they don't have a process for the client acquisition or the process for like the actual sales
So
call
there's two,
flow.
right? If we kind of look at it, like the first part of it is like having a solid offer, right? Like everyone, if you're in the agency space, probably already like heard this from like Alex or Mosey's book and all that kind of stuff, like $100 million offers. That would be like step number one. Then step number two is like driving leads to that offer. And then the last part, the most important part is like the actual like sales process. Cause it's kind of like a bridge. You can think of it as like a bridge in the sense that like if you have the last portion of that bridge missing, like what's going to happen, right? Cars are going to fall through. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing here. Like you can have the greatest offer and have 100 leads coming in per day. But if you don't have a sales process in place, it's not going to be scalable. And you might be in a position where you don't actually close anyone. I
Totally.
remember like for me in my first like even 30 sales calls were all like pitching free trials. And you would think like someone would just like say yes to a free trial. And it was like a lot of people were like actually saying no. There were some free trials from it. But you'd be surprised. Like my initial kind of thing when I started off was like, yeah, everyone like who wouldn't say yes to a free trial.
Yeah.
But there's so many things involved, even in just like influencing someone to even get started on a free trial, like certain objections even then, which I was shocked with,
Sure.
like the time objection, like trust is probably like the biggest one as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, in all aspects of any agency, having that sales process is like super crucial,
Yeah.
especially if your plan is to scale past 10K a month. It's definitely one of those things you can't ignore.
For sure. I agree. And then yeah, for sure. It's a waste to get somebody in, even if it is referrals. I mean, it's like if you're growing your business based off of referrals or you get a lot of referrals or you have a big opportunity with referrals, it's like, okay, what happens next is equally as important. So
Yeah.
what would you say? Like what's a like when you say sales process, like what do you mean? Like what did yours look like? Or like what does yours look like now? Like what do you feel is an ideal sales process?
Yeah. So I think in general, all like if you're selling high ticket, and you're an agency owner, then your sales process for your specific offer and agency might look slightly different than like, for example, mine or another person's agency, but they all follow like the same structure, right? Like intro would be the first component, like finding out like what the reason is for like the person that's coming in. Why are they on this call? Discovery, which is like going through like what's their current situation, what are they looking to get to, what's the thing getting in the way, what are the implications of them not getting there, why are they looking to get started now, why with you. All of these things are in the discovery portion where we're kind of getting all the information that we need and seeing if there's even a sale to be made. And of course, I'm just giving like high level overview on it.
Right.
The process is a little bit more fleshed out than this. And then we have the third component, which is the transition, right? Kind of making that transition from like asking the right questions to seeing if and how you can help them, to like now transitioning to the presentation. And the fourth last component is the presentation, where you show them, here's what I do, here's how I can help you specifically, here's the price, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the high level overview. I think a lot of agency owners I see, when they do take like a call like this from someone who might be a stranger, there's a fallacy of like kind of just winging it. And when you wing things, you're kind of, you say different things each time. I know, because I used to do this. Like, you'll say different things. Like sometimes you'll say something like really good and like, you know, it sounds great, but then other times you won't. And it's very sporadic, and it creates inconsistency because there's no like consistent process, right? If there's a consistent process, you're going to get consistent results because you're saying relatively like the same things on the call, right? Now, the extreme of that is like if you follow a script to the T, where it's like you're literally like reading from the script and the person can tell. That would be one extreme, which I've also been at that extreme as well, where I've had like, I would have people saying like, hey, are you reading from a script?
No way.
Yeah, seriously.
That's funny.
Yeah. And that was like one extreme. So I've been at both, like testing, like where is like the happy medium. And so when you can like figure out like, all right, here's like the best thing that works. For me, it's been like following a framework, because with a framework, you have the benefits of like a structure, like with a script, but you also have like room to move within that structure, which means
Yeah.
like it's not really like a set script where it's like, oh, I have to go through this question. Like they must answer this question. I have to say this question in this
Yeah.
exact same way. Rather, it's more like, okay, if someone comes in and tells me, hey man, like I came in because here's my current situation. I have this problem. Here's my goal. And like, I know I can't get there. And, you know, I checked you guys out and, you know, this is like exactly what I was looking for. That sales call is probably going to seem like a lot shorter than someone who just came in. Like, I just heard you guys, you know, just kind of booked in because was interested in your video or whatever. Two different calls. I'm going to go through the exact same structure, but you know,
Yeah.
I might not go through the exact same questions because one person is giving me more information, one person is giving me less. So
Yeah.
when you have that structure, it like kind of gives you the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I think the other benefit of the structure that you've done really well is you can build a team. Because I think like the biggest bottleneck as an agency owner is ourselves in many ways. So as we start to scale and grow and hire more people, like it's about removing us as a bottleneck. So we're like from a sales team perspective, what did your sales team look like?
Yeah, so we pretty much, I think the most we've had was about five full-time closers, two BDRs, which is basically people that set and close. So like seven total people that were like
Five closers,
on like
two
sales.
setters.
So BDRs, how I called them, BDRs are basically they're the in between an SDR and like a closer. So
Okay.
like a BDR would
Yeah.
be someone who sets and closes,
Yeah.
right? And so that was pretty much like at its height of like the sales team when we had like more like that was pretty much what it looked like. And then for each one of them we have like a very like the exact same structure that I ran through here, like the
Yeah.
framework, but customized to our agency and to
Right.
our offer and all that stuff. It's like it's almost like kind of like when you bring on a CSM, like an account manager, like you have to have processes in place for like onboarding and
Totally.
all that stuff. It's kind of like this is the prerequisite to like hiring even your first closer. And as you bring on like more closers too, like there's more complexity where like you
Yeah.
have to really make sure that process that you have is rock solid, so
Yeah.
that each closer, they might understand things certain different ways, they might have different experience levels. So you have to make sure that like that framework is solid and there's like an easy way for them to understand it and be able to communicate it to the client.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
each closer had two setters.
no, one setter. one setter on average. We pretty much
Okay.
have like a team of setters, and then they give off appointments to each one
Got
of the
it.
closers depending on how stacked they are. If one person is stacked, we move on to the next one based on priority and closing rate.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much what it looked like.
So
But
like, so hiring a closer, like I feel like a lot of agency owners like, no, but like I'm the best at sales. Like I think the founders are for sure the best at
yeah,
sales, like hands
100%.
down. Like I think the hardest position to hire for outside of like a solid videographer is a closer because it's like you need
100%.
somebody who can speak the founder's language and it's not really like not a technical skill in many ways from my perspective. So like where were you at in your business when you're like, okay, I need a closer? And then what steps did you take in order
I
to
already,
find and train?
yeah, I already kind of looked ahead. I already knew I would take on a closer. I like when I was at 10K a month, I already projected when I would hit 50K a month
Mhm.
based on like how we were growing. So then I already started bringing on like closers, like I guess let's just call them like part-time closers. And all those initial round of closers, like like very short-lived because there
Mhm.
were so many lessons I had to learn, and improvements I even had to make with the offer. Because the way we had set it up was like where it's like 1,500 a month was our what do you call it? Our fee at the time. And it's very hard to like with no setup fee or anything like that. It's just like 1,500 a month. And it's
Yeah.
very hard to like get like top quality closers when you don't have like an opportunity that could get them at least like around 8 to 10 grand per month.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there was a lot of restructuring going on, like a lot of things to be like changed in order to really attract like top level talent.
Yeah.
So once I switched it up and I had the offer that was strong, so it's kind of like creating an offer for clients, but creating now an offer for closers. When I once I had someone that was an offer that was strong, I started attracting more talent, then made like the early mistakes, and then really found kind of like a groove of like how to hire closers. It is still to this point like kind of a hard thing to do because like it's like you said, like really hard to find like in the closer in the talent pool of closers. It's like really hard to like find a really good one. You do they're definitely out there 100%. It's just going
Mhm.
through like a lot of like numbers and going through and finding if they fit all of the different criteria, not just skill wise, but also like culture, character traits, like everything needs to line up. Because there's a lot of things that could go wrong if you don't hire the right closer. It could be like a huge waste of money. But when you have someone that's solid, it's like completely like the best thing that you could do for your agency. So
Yeah.
like I already started kind of bringing on like part-time closers around like 30K a month. And then once I had like maxed myself out on sales appointments at around 50K a month, that's where I started bringing on my first closer. Then after that, my second closer. Then after that, like towards the end of the year, like third at the end of that year, um, my third closer. So every 3 months, I was just bringing on like another closer. Um, and that's pretty much how I did it in that progression.
Yeah. Yeah, that's money. So as far as like finding the closers, did you use an agency or were you like DMing people or did you just post a job
My
like on Indeed
so
or
my first closure was someone that I found through the Facebook groups.
okay.
I think it might have been even like the high level, go high level like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Facebook group. Someone I think that had been recommended by another agency owner. So I went in there and was just like looking like everywhere I could look, everywhere, like typing in closer, like
Nice.
LinkedIn. I went on Facebook groups. Eventually I found this person who like specialized in this. And
Sick.
so he was the first person I had brought on. Then after that, I started using LinkedIn and Indeed to prospect like people, yeah, salespeople that were
Nice.
looking for an opportunity. So that was where I found the all the rest of them that came after that point
Yeah.
was through like LinkedIn and Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Solid. So backtracking. So if agency owners are listening to this and maybe they're not ready to hire a closer and they're just trying to like refine their sales skills, like what would you recommend if I'm like, okay, I want to get more leads, I want to start closing more deals, like what did you do that helped refine your skills?
Yeah. So for me, I'm a huge proponent of like accelerating your skills, like you could definitely like Google stuff and YouTube it or whatever. And even then there's kind of limited kind of information on this specifically because there's so many like mixed methods and all that kind of stuff. I've always just kind of looked at like who has the result that I want, who's kind of like the best in the space, and then gone in there, paid them a lot of money and learned what they did. Like that's for me, that was what really accelerated my growth the fastest because they already had like a lot of knowledge that really helped them and they've accumulated over the years. And so for me, it was just about like going in there, taking that knowledge, downloading it into my brain. And it's things that like I even will like go back into those courses and just go through like a refresher. Kind of like a book. Like I'll read like my favorite books I will have already read like 5 times.
Yeah.
So it's a never ending process. Like I'll still go through those courses, study on sales, read sales books. And I think that right there, that's been like the single biggest one is
Courses.
going in there, finding who's got it, buying their stuff, and then continuously learning it. Like really not just like watching the videos and all that kind of stuff and showing up to the calls, but like really studying it as if it were, you know, like an exam in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you go in there and like you rewatch it, you reread the thing, you take notes. Like that's literally what I would do, and that's what it takes to win in sales, is like really treating it like as if it were like an exam in school and you're studying for it, you're going through it, you're highlighting stuff, you're like repeating things, like that level of intention behind it. And then the second thing would be like practice. So once you know like what to do and like you have like, all right, this is what it should look like, then you got to go out there and practice it and do as many reps as possible. Like when it was just me doing all the sales calls, like I would, no kidding, go from, what was it, like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. all sales calls. I would only take lunch when it was like I had a no show, and I knew I would always have a no show. Like I'm never gonna have 100% no show. I mean show rate. So whenever I would have a no show, like that's when I would eat. But I would stack my calendar completely full. At that point, I had a VA, so I would have the VA like completely stack up my calendar 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which was 10 sales calls, and then I would just go each one like I would just basically apply what I learned.
Yeah. So 2 questions to follow up with that. So, I mean, one, to recap what you said, find somebody who's been where you want to be, invest in probably their program, or if they do consulting, invest with them. And then 2 is practice. I think it's such a game of, yeah, what you said, repetition becomes second nature. Like it's like learning to ride a bike. It sucks at first, and then over time it just becomes secondhand, and then that's
100%.
exactly what you need to do. So it's just I mean, it's communicating. It's learning to communicate effectively, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah, that's what it is. That's it's interesting because like I found that like once I kind of learned these skills, like they start to permeate in other areas of life. It's like, yeah, even a lot of the principles you learn in sales like directly correlate into like even dating, or even to like leading a team. Like you're constantly, especially if you have an agency, you're constantly influencing.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a sales prospect, but then also like an existing client, like having them like, you know, maybe you have to reset expectations, you have to get them realigned. Like all that stuff is like influencing, or maybe they're like panicking because they like didn't make a like $10,000 in a day or whatever. Like you have to go in there and influence people. And the same thing when it comes to like closers and any employees that you bring on, it's like influencing. So sales for me has been like hands down like the best skill that I have ever learned and like will continue to learn and refine. Because I'm a huge believer of like, if you can nail down lead gen and sales, you like never have to worry ever again about like finances. Like you'll always be able to produce your own opportunities and then close your own opportunities.
So
right.
true.
So
yeah.
So it's like one of those things where like if you can do those 2 things, your agency is like almost guaranteed that it will grow because you have the the fuel fire,
Yeah,
to the fuel for the fire
for sure.
to make it grow.
Yeah, agree. So you're 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. just hammering sales calls. So there's a lot of agencies in this space who are like, okay, just need to focus on fulfillment and I'm not really focused on sales. Like how are you able to manage like making sure clients were having success and also focusing on like, because if you
Yeah.
do 10 hours of sales calls, like you don't have time to do anything from a fulfillment perspective. Are you multitasking? Are you like having a day for fulfillment, or what did that look like
So at
practically for
that
you?
point, when I had that, I had a client account manager that was taking care of all of the other stuff. So a client success manager that I had that pretty much took care of all the calls. And then at that point, I'd already systemized everything out when I was taking all those calls so that I had the people in place. So someone who would be able to contact clients, take care of any things that came up. And also, I had all the systems in place as well to make sure that as I was taking sales calls, onboarding was pretty much automated. The fulfillment was pretty much taken care of by like our internal team members. So that way, like the biggest thing I could focus on was like sales, right?
Mm,
So I could grow my company, grow my agency. And I like usually have always put in like a lot of hours. So as I was working, like, yeah, I was taking about 10 hours of that. I would have, let's say, like 70% show rates. I'd probably three calls that didn't show up. I would eat, I would respond back to messages for the team. And then with the other, like, let's say 2 to 4 hours that I had left, I'd respond back to messages and all that kind of stuff. I'd respond back to clients or whatever. So yeah, it took really a lot amount of, how do I say it? Hours
yeah,
that I had to go in at that point when I was really growing my company from around 20 to 30 to like 50 to 80. I was really like I scaled pretty fast. Like I really pushed it
yeah,
um so that I could really like yeah, scale to the level that we did in
yeah.
that amount of time.
And what was like close rate, typical close rate? 10 calls.
So out of 10 calls, usually when I was starting out, I think I was at like 10 to 15%. Now I usually will average around 30% for my agency.
Sure.
So that's kind of what I've been averaging for our agency offer, around 30%. As a general rule, like for scale, you need to consistently be at least 20%. So like when I look at a closer, what they need to be hitting to stay on the team is at least 20%. If
Okay.
they can hit 20%, then I know that I can scale that. If they're not able to hit the 20%, if they're not even able to close like one sale in like the first, let's just give it 2 weeks, they're already not going to continue on with us. But
Yeah.
if they're not able to continue on at 20%, that's where it kind of becomes a problem. But I would say
Yeah.
in general, like if you're on your own and you're doing cold email and all that stuff, you can convert at least 20%. You're solid. 25% is better. 30% is optimal on cold outbound. So I would say those are some rough numbers to
Yeah.
kind of look for.
So like so 70%, 80% rejection rate, like I feel like a lot of agency owners get discouraged pretty quickly, or they feel like, oh, people are saying no, people aren't buying the offer. Like, did I do something wrong? Is my sales skills bad? Is my offer bad? Like all this stuff gets in their head and they become demotivated. Like, what would you say to somebody like that who's just maybe feeling a little discouraged?
Yeah. So for that one, like it could be if you're a new agency owner, it could be that your offer is off. It could be that you're not qualifying correctly. And it could also be like what's happening on before the call. Like, what are we doing like before that meeting that the prospect is seeing? So there's a lot of components to it. And this is something that I like actually recently had a call with an agency U student to help him with this specific thing, to help him increase his close rate. So there could actually be like a couple of things to like evaluate on like, is the offer good? What's being said on the lead gen? When you're generating the leads and the appointments, and then also what's happening before the call. Like, are we qualifying? Are we sending them a VSL? Are we sending the appointment reminders, call confirmations, all that stuff? If all that is in place and you have someone who's qualified, they know why they're on the call and they're interested and they have a need and problem, and they're you know that they're relatively financially qualified, right? Then it could be a sales problem. And so in the beginning, if like you are not closing, that's usually a very strong sign that it is time to get some help on that one. Like there are only so many things that you can kind of tweak based on your own perspective. Because if it's something that's new to you, you can only take based off of what you know. The next level to that would be like maybe like a book on sales. But even then, it's harder for you to like self-analyze what's the thing that for you is causing you to not close at the level it is. But in general, like even the best closers will get like still most of the time, most people saying no. So
Mhm.
it's one of those things where you kind of just get used to it. Like there's really just like, it comes with the territory of like taking sales calls. There are things to improve it, but like largely the name of the game is like going through those numbers and like closing around 30%. It's really about like how you frame each of the calls that you have. Like each person, it's not really like that you could say like, oh, this person said a no, like everything sucks. Or it could be like, to no, I'm getting closer to the yes. This
Mhm.
is under the assumption that like the offer's good, like everything that is going
Sure,
on
sure, sure.
beforehand is solid, and it's purely a sales problem. Then it's like, first you definitely need like some sort of mentorship or coaching for it, to accelerate that and shift your perception around it. Because even after you get the mentorship and coaching around it, like there's still going to be people that say no. That's never going to go away. So
Right.
like framing it as like, all right, this no is actually a step closer to the yes. Because if
Right.
for me, it's always been like, I trust my pipeline, that if I talk to, let's say, 10 people, my close rate is 30. I've seen that pretty consistently. Even now when I hop on calls, like I'll close around 30%. And sometimes it might, like I'll kind of look at it as like, oh, like, man, I'm getting pretty close to like not closing 30%. And then two people will close on the same day.
Mhm.
Right. So it kind of consistently stays around there if you have the same process. So I kind of already just trust that like my skills, my follow up, my skill level will be able to get me 30%. So I don't really worry about it. I know, okay, this is a no. I'm getting a step closer to getting the yes. And out of 10 people, I will get 3 that close.
Yeah. Yeah. Money. So like so let's just say you like from a sales process perspective, let's talk about that. So they book a call or whatever, you have a call with them. Maybe they don't close. Like what is the follow-up protocol? What's like the nurture stuff that you've seen work really well?
Yeah. So for my agency, we have like several steps. What we'll do, we always send like an email recap. Like that's number one. You always want to send something like after the call. You're not going to close everyone, especially if you're getting some of the harder ones, which is like business partner objections, where they confirmed at the beginning that there's no one else. Yeah, and then at the end of the call, they're like, oh yeah, I actually have my business partner or whatever.
Yeah.
That'll happen. So you're not going to close everyone on the first call. You want to have like some sort of email recap you can send over. You want to have some sort of nurture sequence that people will go through after the call, so that even if like maybe it's not the right time or whatever, they're transitioning companies, they're whatever it might be, it's something that's truly outside of your control and makes it harder for them to actually close right then and there. You have something to keep them in front of you. That could be like your social media content to keep them in front of that, your email list, and then your actual like follow-up protocol, which like for me, depending on like what kind of prospect this is, like, are they closing in the next week? Are they closing in like the next month? Are they kind of more 3 to 6 months out? The follow up for that is different,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not gonna message them in the same way. You're not gonna approach it in the same way. The communication cycles are gonna be a lot tighter for someone that's like gonna close in 3 days, as compared to someone that's like 3 months out.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So what about like trainings? Like what were your habits around sales or mindset or whatever it is that helped you become a better salesperson? Then maybe what do you prescribe to closers?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, and the one that I think is a foundation, like just like first of all, always getting this in place, is what are you doing like to set up your day, which means like what are your habits that you have. Like I'm a big believer in like having a morning routine so that you have structure. I know some people aren't huge on like a morning routine and stuff. I think it really depends on each person. If you're a person that's like you're clearly having performance issues, definitely start doing that because it will actually help you. If you're someone who's already been a killer for like 10 years or whatever, probably don't need it. But if you clearly have performance issues and like you're feeling like, you're just unfocused, you're just like feeling not good throughout the day, like getting that morning routine, like doing the basics of like good nutrition, exercising, sleeping good, hydrating, drinking water, all that stuff, non-negotiable. Like
Yeah.
all of those things actually do increase your close rate. It's very hard to close people if you're like feeling tired all the time, if you're like just unclear, like you're just feeling confused and like you're just not feeling good. Prospects will feel that. It will affect your close rate. So that's number one, is getting that as your foundation. And then next, like if you're completely beginning, the one that I recommend that I always go back to is Spin Selling. That is a really, really, really good book that will, if you just read that, like and you have like no experience whatsoever, you'll get very far along. That one is really good, especially for selling high ticket stuff, things that are like over 2K. And that one, I would say, what other one has been really good? I would say that's the main one. If I don't want to overwhelm people that might be listening to this, like if you read Spin Selling, that is gonna take you already a very far along. Reread that one, go through it like five times at least, and that will take you so far.
Yeah.
And then the last part is like I said, like find a mentor, someone who has achieved what you want, and then approach them and see what they offer, all that stuff. Like that's what I've done to really accelerate the process. But if you're starting from like literally like zero, like no sales experience like whatsoever, I would say like dial in the basics, like have your morning routine in place, structure your time correctly so you're not wasting time, and then study Spin Selling, and you're gonna go that alone right there. You're gonna go very far.
Yeah. Money. Anything else to add for anybody who's trying to dial in sales that would be helpful for a tactical as we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, like if you can remember this on what I said, like having a structure in place, creating I'm just gonna call it like a framework for your sales process, even if it's like for example, like a set of questions that you can write down that you can have as a checklist to go into the call. That is another thing that could really help you hugely, because a lot of people will like, if you don't have a set structure, um, it's very easy to forget, especially if you don't have it written down or somewhere documented. It's very easy to forget because once you're in the sales call, like there's a lot happening. There's like every prospect is different. They could hit you on the blind side, and like you're kind of just confused on what the next step could be. But if you have like your structure already and you're looking at it like, oh, this is, can't forget about this question, right? Some questions are important to ask, especially in a sales conversation. So if you could just like look at right now, what's your current process, right? Because you probably have a process, it's just unconscious, right? You're probably saying relatively kind of the same things. Now it's about being like more intentional about, all right, here are some of the things that I'm saying. Here's like, I'm saying this, I should probably take that out. I'm saying this really worked, I'm going to keep saying that.
Yeah.
And that right there, you're going to be on the path to like already improving and dramatically increasing your close rate. So if you're someone that like has been like just not closing deals, and you take what I tell you right now, like you should be at least like I would say 15 to 20%, if you just start like documenting the process and following it.
Yeah. Money. Dope. All right, y'all. Hope you got some value from the podcast. If you're listening and you liked it, uh, give a thumbs up on YouTube. If you're listening to it, be sure to leave a review, subscribe, make sure you're following along and all of that good stuff. And if you are an agency owner who maybe feel some of the stuff that we were talking about from a sales call perspective. You're unclear, you don't have that mentor that Gilberto was talking about. Book a call down below, agencyu.co/book call with our team, and we can chat to see if there's opportunities that we can help you and specifically your sales process. Obviously, Gilberto has a breadth of knowledge and can refine it quite a bit. I've seen what he's done for the students in Agency U, and it is in fact really impressive. So if that is you, book a call down below, and we'll see you on the next pod.